forgot to put 1. My fault.
I found out what I did now.
You had number
foil.
Yeah, number 1.
Okay, so we have to FOIL here. So we get -8 plus 4i plus 12i minus 6i squared. Okay, so if we add these, that's 16i. What does -6i squared turn into? And so add like terms, -8 plus 6 is -2 plus 16i. Remember, I do want standard form a plus bi first. We put the real number first, and then the imaginary number at the end.
You don't want us to do GCF?
No, you don't have to.
Well, I don't know.
Wouldn't doing GCF bring us back?
No, you would just factor out a -2.
No, I'm saying like factor so simple.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. One thing, when I look at this, if you have I, or negatives under the radical, what can you do first? Alright, so if we take out those i's, what happens if you have an I on both the top and the bottom?
I can't.
Can't do that.
Those drop out. Can we leave a radical in the denominator?
No, but there's a GCF.
Okay, so if we, actually,
Go ahead.
why don't we, can we reduce this before
Yes.
I multiply it? It would make it way easier.
9, 17.
Okay, since both of these are under the radical, you can reduce them. Grab a calculator real quick. Type 15 over 153 and turn it into fraction form. What does that give you? So you could go ahead and reduce this to 5 over 51. You divide top and bottom by 3. So then we have to get the radical off the bottom, so if we multiply by the radical 51, radical 51 times radical 51 is 51. So we have the square root of 255. Does that reduce at all?
No.
No. So that would be our final answer. Make sure you check to see if any perfect squares go into it.
It just says.
Okay. So problem 6. What do we have to remember here?
Your tongue is different.
So we're going to multiply by 2 plus I on top and bottom. And then we FOIL. So we get -6 minus 3i plus 8i plus 4i squared. On the bottom you get 4, positive 2i and negative 2i cancel, minus I squared. So I can combine like terms. 4i squared would turn into -4. 4 minus I squared, that turns into 4 plus 1. Because I squared is -1. So we get -10 plus 5i over 5. Divide everything by 5, so -2 plus 5.
I think I did 13 right. Pretty sure that's what happened.
Is that one okay?
Is 13 negative 1 plus or minus 2 square root of 5?
Okay, we'll go ahead and look at it. I'm sure somebody could use it?
I actually.
Well, what I did was I just reduced further.
You-
Or I put it in the
No.
A plus
So negative 1/4 plus or minus radical 5/2. That's fine.
negative 1, yeah.
Okay, on this one. What is the easiest strategy for solving this problem?
Square root.
We could just do the square root method. If we square root each side, if you add a square root, you have to make sure and do plus and minus. Square root and the square drop, so we get 4x plus 1 equals plus and minus. How would you break apart 20?
1, 5.
So square root of 4 is 2, radical 5. So then I'm trying to get my x by itself, so we can subtract the 1. And then, so a couple ways you could have your answer written. You could leave it as one big fraction. You could also split it apart and have it like that. Either of those answers is okay. Anything else on this page that we need? So 22, it's good. We need to talk about one of these inequalities to refresh.
We have 25 up there
Yeah.
for an inequality.
Okay, so on the inequalities, I told you start out treating it like it's an equation. So we just have to start out solving when this is equal to 0. How would you do that on this one? Slip and slide. So if we bring this down, that's x squared minus x plus u minus 6. So that factors into x minus 3, x plus 2. But then what do you have to do?
Square by 2.
So we get 2x minus 3, x plus 1. Alright, if you set those equal to 0, we get a positive 3/2 and a negative 1. And what I've asked you to do to finish it is to draw me a rough sketch. So, those are your x-intercepts. We hit our x-axis at 1.5 and negative 1. When I look at this, it was a positive x squared, so that means the graph opens up. I was asking when it was greater than 0. So greater than 0 is above the x-axis. So it's these two sections. Then you have to give me the interval. So it's coming from negative infinity, stops at negative 1. This had an equal to, so we put a bracket, union. This one starts at 3/2 and goes to positive infinity.
I like how it autocorrects your highlights. Like your
That's the next straight.
those lines were okay. It's like squiggly on your graph, but it's like these highlighter lines.
That's the highlighter is taken. Alright, is that one okay? Let's look at 25. Alright, what'd you do first?
304.
Alright, so then we have to do slip and slide. So we get x squared plus 7x minus 8.
That doesn't change our.
Doing the slip and slide. So that would be x plus 8, x minus 1. So we get x to be a negative 8 and positive 1. So our graph, we
No,
hit.
to divide above it.
Oh, yes. Got ahead of myself there. we started out multiplying by -2, so divide by that. So we get x minus 4, and this would be a 2x plus 1. Positive because the -1 divided by -2. So set those equal to 0, and we get 4 and -1/2. Okay, so we hit the x-axis at those two spots. If you look at this original one, a -2x squared, what does that tell you?
Opens down.
It opens down. So we have an upside down parabola. Okay. I asked where this was greater than 0. So greater than 0 would be above the x-axis. There was no equal to, so that's parentheses, so it's from the -1/2 to the +4.
Why wouldn't those be brackets?
Because the original inequality did not have an equal to on it.
Turns out if you graph it right, it graphs right.
Which does help.
Yeah. Like my analogy with the piano, if you click the right keys, or you play the right song.
Any other questions on that?
I like the
Make sure on those inequalities that you are drawing a picture to support your answer. Okay. Now let's get into these word problems. So you will have some of these on your test, and they are going to be worth a decent amount of points. So make sure you know how to do them. So this one starts out. It tells us the height of the baseball is given by this equation. Okay, so I gave you the equation. Part A says, what is S of 2.5? What is that telling me to do? Plug in 2.5 for the t. So you just grab your calculator, plug that in, and what do we get? 14. Okay, then I asked you to interpret it. So it told us t is the seconds, and s is the height. Okay, and height was measured in feet. So my t was 2.5 seconds, so after 2.5 seconds, the ball is 14 feet high. So if I ask you to interpret, I am expecting a sentence. Make sure you use the numbers given in the problem. Don't just tell me this is the height. Tell me specifically, after 2.5 seconds, the height is 14 feet. B, this is something that I have asked you over and over and over again. That whole packet that you worked on last week talked about finding the maximums and minimums. We've done maximums and minimums when we did our graphing section. Anytime I have a quadratic and I ask for a maximum or a minimum, what am I asking you to find? Vertex. How do we find a vertex?
Opposite of A, or opposite of B divided by 2A.
So my B is 44. So we get 44 over 32, or 11. Yeah, negative 44 over negative 32. So that gives us 11 over 8, or 1.375.
Yes.
And that is our seconds.
You can plug that in.
Part C asks, what is the maximum height? So B, I just wanted to know the when, so that was the t. Part C, I want to know what's the height, so you are just going to go to this equation and plug it in to get the y value for vertex. Sam, what'd you get? 30.
34.2.
So opposite of b over 2a gives you the x value of that vertex. Plug it in to get your y.
Do we have to write sentence for that?
You do not. I would appreciate labels, you know, seconds, feet, but the only time I'm going to require a full sentence is if I ask you to interpret it. All right, 27. This would probably be the highest point value question on the test because I didn't give you much to
Just
go
the
on.
hardest one.
You had to do everything.
Is that the hardest one?
It is the hardest one. That's why it's worth the most points.
I literally asked for
Wait, bro,
it,
are
and
you-
he pulled out his phone, and I was like, oh no.
We did this
A
part.
homeowner needs to build a fence for the dog in the backyard. The yard is rectangular in shape and no fence will be placed along the house. So we have a rectangle, but we're not doing fence on every side. So really we're looking at like a 3-sided rectangle for our fence.
Does it matter which side we pick?
The homeowner only has enough money budgeted to purchase 110 feet of fence. What dimensions for the fence will provide the maximum area for the dog to run? What does the 110 represent?
Total perimeter.
Well, now you can't go over.
Perimeter. Yeah.
The distance around, the amount of fence, that's my perimeter. How do you get perimeter?
Add up both sides.
Okay, I do not know what these sides are. I know in a rectangle, opposite sides are equal, so these two would both be x. What could I call this one?
110 minus 2x.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
you're a step ahead of me. Yes, you're correct. So the perimeter says you add all of these up, and it equals 110. So that missing side is 110 minus 2x. All right, I want to maximize the area. How do you get area? So that's x times y. But for y, we can use the 110 minus 2x. So if you distribute, we get 110x minus 2x squared. There is my quadratic equation. Now, anytime I ask you to find the maximum or minimum of a quadratic, what am I asking you to find?
Vertex.
Vertex. So we need to do opposite of b over 2a. My b is 110. My a is negative 2, so we get negative 110 over negative 4, or 55 over 2, so 27.5. Okay, I asked you for the dimensions. Alright, so that's my x. Then to get your y, remember y is 110 minus 2x. So 110 minus 2 times the 27.5, and we get 55. So the dimensions, that's just the length and the width.
Oh, my problem the whole time was that I flipped it around to make it better. And somehow, it really got fixed it.
I got about as far as the equation.
I
Remember
kept
how to.
plugging
You forgot
it
the
in.
maximum part?
Yeah.
I kept plugging it in, and I just kept getting 1,512.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's not
You're
right.
getting the area instead of the dimension.
If you do 2x plus y on one side, you do 2x on the other side, you do y is equal to since you like subtracted it over.
No, that's just assumption.
What?
It's not anything. It's not.
So right here,
Yeah.
so I subtract this over. So this ends up to be 110 minus 2.
Oh, I thought that was.
Oh, sorry, that was just sloppy handwriting.
Not gonna sleep. Quick sleep, come back.
Other questions?
Okay.
I can do all of the other ones, no problem.
Okay, so we will definitely do another one of these
Hey,
here
let's
in
do
a
a little
minute.
packet.
Last question on here that we'll go over, and then I'll do some additional practice over everything. So 28, I gave you a revenue equation. Okay, so part A asks for R2, so what do you do?
Plug it
Plug
in.
into
Plug in 2.
X.
And you get 1080. And this one said interpret, so I want a sentence. So the revenue is 1080, revenue is money, so that's dollars. When X was the number of items produced, so when 2 items are produced.
Let me see 2 items produced.
That's fine. B, how many items should be produced to maximize revenue? Anytime I ask you to maximize, what am I asking for? Vertex. How do we find a vertex? So, opposite of negative 560 would be positive 560 over 2 times negative 10.
It's positive 560, so would it be negative 560?
Did I write down this problem wrong? Yes. Okay. It's like this is not going to work. And we get 28. So 28 items need to be produced.
Come on here.
Part C, how do we get the maximum revenue?
Plug it in.
So if you plug in the 28, you get,
7,000.
so make sure you put a label on that. That is money, so that is dollar.
How did I do real quick?
It says it's 67.
I did it quickly.
My heat just won't kick off.
Why is it always like half? Like 28 plus 28 is 56.
No.
Oh, that thing stinks.
Yeah. Isn't that gross?
All those microplastics.
You want us
Into your brain.
to
So,
show?
what were you saying, Carson?
I was wondering why it's always like
That's
half
why I
the
know
value.
recipe from a goat.
Just because you're dividing by 2. That's because it's 2A, so it's always half. There.
Angela has a question.
Like on C, do you want us to show that we actually plugged in?
I showed it in B.
Because I showed it in every other one. It's just like in this one, I just like wrote the max value is, the max revenue is, so that's fine.
I showed it in B, like all my words with vertex and
That's fine.
started drawing arrows.
What is weird?
Other questions there?
Not in the sweatshirt.
He's listening to R. Kelly right now.
Little pop.
Okay, done, but let's start working these out. On the first one, the most common mistake is starting out multiplying these things, but before we multiply them, what do we have to do? So we get I radical 15 times I radical 5 over radical 3. When you multiply then, I times I is I squared. 15 times 5 is 75. What's I squared turn into?
-1.
Since 75 and 3 are both under radicals, you could go ahead and divide those two things. 75 divided by 3 is 5, so you get -1 times the square root, of 25.
Oh, there we go.
So that gives you
-5.
-5.
Could you have just broken down
That's not what I got.
negative 15 into
I got it.
three whole?
I took a very
Yeah.
long, complicated route, but I got the same
Alright, I to the 53rd. The thing about i's, we know that whenever we get 2 of them, it turns into,
-1.
so if you have 53, how many groups of 2 can you make?
26.
Okay, 2 times 26 is 52, so there is 1 left over. So I squared is -1 to the 26 times I. What is negative 1 to the 26th power?
1.
And 1 times I is I.
Oh.
Have to show me work on those. If you just write down an answer without work, I'm not giving you credit. Okay, have to support it. Number
So
3.
kids like test the odds. Okay.
What if you get it right?
Too
I'm
bad.
saying, like, this is test the odds, man.
If you try slip and slide, does it work?
No.
No. So what else always works? Quadratic formula. Or complete the square. So opposite of b
That's not worth it.
plus or minus the square root
Especially with the A.
of b squared minus 4ac
Yeah.
all over 2a. Alright, so we get 16 plus 24.
Little blind.
Are you guys listening to me? Because I feel like there's a lot of other conversations.
I
going on.
am.
What would I need to do here?
Take out 4.
Okay, we can break 40 into 4 and 10. Square root of 4 is 2. So to finish it, you could divide everything by 2. So you could write your answer as negative 2 plus or minus 2 radical 10 over 3. Or you could split it up. Negative 2/3 plus or minus 2 radical 10.
No, you take out 2.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that?
I took out that 2. Just making sure you're paying attention.
We were on their case about it.
You passed.
I usually do.
Good.
No.
All right.
There's no water.
What would we do on this one?
Comes back to.
Greatest common factor. You could take out a negative 4x.
Yeah.
Smell that thing. Just give it away.
Okay.
You okay if we did UDC? I think I know that's the rule.
What'd you do?
Slip and slide.
It won't work because you don't have a constant.
I just took out X.
That's okay.
I
You
got the
should
same
get
thing as you.
0 and 2.
I got the same thing
I
as you.
don't know what I did.
Does this open up or down?
Oh, it opens down. What the
Opens
heck?
down.
No.
Fine for those haters.
We want to know when it is less than 0. So less than 0, is that above or below?
Blue.
Equal to means bracket, so be negative infinity to 0, bracket, union, bracket, 2 to infinity.
It opens.
I feel smart when I prove you wrong, but I don't want to like. I don't want to push. I don't want to
Like,
push.
you
it.
can't really do slip and slide.
You can.
can't say multiplies to.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
I get it.
Well, it's not technically.
I got 1.
I did it anyway. I break the rule of math.
Okay,
What of it?
here's a word problem.
Word problem.
Like the hardest one that we might have on here. Okay, so let's say, I'm going to read one out of the book here.
Oh, great.
Alright, so I'm going to paraphrase though. We have a college that is going to build a rectangular parking lot on land bordered on one side by a highway. There are 640 feet of fencing available to fence the other 3 sides. So how many sides of fence do we need? 3. Alright, we have 640 feet of fence to use. What should I label these sides?
X and Y.
And 640 minus 2x.
Okay, I'm going to call them X and Y for a second. What if we were going to put it on all 4 sides? What would change?
There'd be
2Y.
Yeah, you would have 2 Y's. So we could do it either way. Alright, so what this means, if we have 640 feet of fence, when we add all these together, it equals 640. So this missing side is 640 minus 2x. Right, so those are my 2 sides of my parking lot. If I want the maximum area, so we need a formula for area. How do you find area?
X times Y.
Length times width, x times y. So that would be x times 640 minus 2x. Alright, and then any word problem I'm going to give you, you probably noticed a pattern on all 3 on your homework. What did I ask you to find eventually? Vertex. I want to know when I get the maximum, so that's the vertex. Opposite of b over 2a. So that's negative 640 over 2 times negative 2. So negative 640 divided by negative 4, 160.
There you go.
Okay, so if I said what are the dimensions? So the parking lot is 160 feet by, the other one is my y, so you take your 160 and plug it into y.
I don't feel like that's the right number.
You should get